up, everyone? Welcome back to the Hashira Half Hour. I am back from vacation and really excited to dive right into episode 7. Not gonna lie, I was watching this on my little phone screen at a hotel in a random city in California with my headphones in because my husband hadn't watched it yet, trying not to scream over the end of this episode, which we'll talk about in a little while. But what a great episode. I'm Hannah, I'm back, and I'm, as always, joined by my friends.
What's up, everybody? It's your favorite Gyomei stan. Honestly, this episode is so good, and it goes so hard for his backstory. It's a really sad backstory, too. I think it's one of the sadder ones that we've seen. So we'll talk about that in a minute, though.
You know that it says something if it's like, this is one of the sadder backstories, even though I do feel like it's a fair assessment to be like, this is the saddest backstory for every single character in the show.
Yeah.
Emotional damage, anybody? But I'm excited to talk about this. I've been excited for a week, especially to talk about like that ending, though. Mm-hmm. So I think we should just dive right into it.
Yeah, and I know we made you all wait a week for our discussion about the Muzan walk. I'm so sorry. That was my fault. We tried. My Wi-Fi at a hotel was just not working with us, but we're here. We're going to discuss it, but we're going to kind of walk through the episode as per usual because there was so much good stuff in this episode, truly. Like, I know the ending kind of overshadows all the things that happen in this episode, which is a lot. So we kind of pick right back up where we left off with Tanjiro pushing that boulder, which I know you mentioned it, so thank you for mentioning it in the last episode. Shout out to Hana-san. It's a training arc, dude. I would tell him to relax, but no, he doesn't need to. Anyway, we see him continue to move it. As we know, they have to move it one cho, which, surprisingly, I didn't know that was 358 feet.
That
is really far. I think in the manga it translated to centimeters, not feet, which, like, obviously they're translating more for Americans in this, so if you're not American, we apologize for stealing all that, but 358 feet is a long way, so I was pretty surprised by that. Zenitsu and Inosuke are watching. Inosuke is very jealous, so he yells, "Tempura, tempura!" coming through, and he is also able to push the boulder. I mean, we love our strong boys, right?
He said, "I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder." It's not a boulder, it's a rock. I don't know. Like, of course Tanjiro has this, like, main character OP moment, but he has to, right? And he has summoned it with his emotional recall that we discussed in the last one. This, like, emotional damage that he is recounting to help him push forward, as do we all. Sisyphus pushing that rock once again. When one must imagine Sisyphus happy, and that is Tanjiro.
Who's Sisyphus?
Sisyphus is a Greek myth. Mm-hmm. Sisyphus is a character from Greek mythology. He is known for being punished by the gods and doomed to push the same boulder up a mountain every single day, after which it rolls back down, and he does it over and over and over and over. And so a French philosopher, Albert Camus, later on, I'm going like way too into this, but he wrote this wonderful essay that was kind of like about the persistence of human determination and like the human will to keep going. And so it's like this is kind of embodied in like the Sisyphus myth. And it's like one must imagine Sisyphus happy to push the rock up again, up and up. And then people turned it into memes. They're like, the damn dishes again. And that is adulting, folks.
Wow.
So there we go.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay.
Anytime.
The boulder is conflicted about being pushed one cho away. Oh. But that was really cool. I liked how they talked about like using emotional will. I've done this personally when I had to push a car in my neighbor's backyard because I used my Tanjiro scream and I went and I pushed that car. Let me tell you, that car started to move and my neighbor was like, "Wow, I didn't know you had that in you." And I was like, "Neither did I, buddy. Here we are." No, I think it's really cool that we were able to see Tanjiro kind of unlock in this moment, really dialed in. So it was a really good piece of training arc moment. I think it was my favorite piece of the training arc, definitely, because it's like the most simple mechanic and the most simple like training exercise, but it's the most difficult for sure. And now that I understand Sisyphus in Albert Camus, I love it even more.
Yay!
Yay!
Glad I could contribute.
No, it's really interesting. I like it when you drop mythology facts like that.
Thanks.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Hi.
No, I agree, Bryan. I didn't get to talk about it in episode 6, but that whole just process of him actually moving it from the music to the voice acting to the way they animated, like the fire going through his body just the way Rengoku's did when he was saying Kokoro Moyase, and then coming here, seeing him like, no, he's not just moving it. He's moving it the whole way. Like, he's not stopping. He's going to do it. And that is more of a feat than, like, what Inosuke does. Because Inosuke does move it in this moment. But a little bit later on, which I guess we'll get to, but we find out he didn't actually move it the whole way. So he's not quite done. But nonetheless, Zenitsu is watching a little bit scared because he's watching his two besties do it. And he still obviously feels like he's not going to be able to. However, he is very quickly distracted by Chuntaro, which we haven't seen Chuntaro in quite a while. I love that little bird. I'm so happy to see them. But they are delivering a letter. And something that I noticed in this moment was it's a simple voice acting moment because they're literally going choo choo choo, but they had a hint of like fear and desperation in that. And clearly Zenitsu needs to read this letter.
I know what this letter contains, but the anime does not allude to it at all. It's just a very mysterious letter that he receives. But I know that the fear behind the small Chun is very real and should be very respected, in a sense. The last time we saw Chuntaro was actually in season 1, when he was dying at Mount Nanagumo. So Chuntaro really only shows up in the most important of moments, and this is one of those.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to disagree a tiny bit here, because I do feel, and great, I'm not going to go deep into what it is, but the manga readers know what's in this letter. All three of us know what's in this letter, but if you're just an anime viewer, you don't, and that's pretty cool. But what I will say is that there is something in this episode that is related to what's in the letter that we're going to have to talk about in the future, because it's not in the last episode either. But it's really interesting, and it is something that I actually completely forgot was, in fact, in the manga. And I think I completely skimmed over it. That's all I'm going to say about that, but it actually does tie in really well, and there's a lot of foreshadowing here with Zenitsu specifically. Yeah,
I'll admit, I think even after reading the manga all the way through twice, I didn't quite understand what this letter was. I think maybe it's just that in the manga, it's like one panel, and if there's no speaking in a panel, I think we have the tendency to kind of glaze over it and not notice. So I think this just kind of reminded me of what's in the letter. And there's a lot of moments in this episode where they like kind of start something that doesn't get completed. And this whole season's kind of been that way because it is a build-up arc. There is a lot of things that have been developed in this season that will get finished later on, and you just have to have some patience with the story. So that is definitely one of them, but it seems to be a pretty important letter because Chuntaro was very desperate to get him to read that letter. A little bit more sounding than usual, for sure, but we'll have to revisit that a little bit later. Tanjiro finishes pushing the boulder, and in a comedic moment, almost dies. Again. 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 Literally Tanjiro being like, almost dies. Again. He's like that Grandpa Simpson meme, like turning around with his hat and then right back out of the house, like every time he goes to the hospital. Imagine being someone like Tanjiro, where you survive multiple fights against these incredibly strong foes, and then you push a boulder, you sweat too much, and you're like, well, shit, I'm gonna die because of dehydration. Ain't that just the way? So funny. He starts imagining faces of his friends, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Murata. Love him. He solos the verse. And just for the record, because I've heard a few people that are like, this isn't real. He's not imagining Nezuko in his final moments. He's not imagining people in his final moments. His life isn't flashing before his eyes here. He's literally just begging for someone to find him and give him water because he doesn't want to die. So that's what's going on here. Super hilarious. Water. I need it. I need it.
god for Tanjiro's silly dying moments, which this is like not the first time. This happened in the Swordsmith Village. He was like crossing the little bridge with his like little ghost hat on. It's like, man, this poor kid gets so close, yet so far.
Even when
every
training.
time. And it's like, nope, I'm gonna bring you right back in.
You're the main character and can't bite the dust yet.
Alas, not today, son. This was really funny to me though, like especially Murata showing up, because it's like, what are you doing here? And also the fact that he was like the last one that showed up. It's like, okay.
Somebody's
The last one and the most likely one to show up, though.
Yeah,
out of all
I
of
know.
I feel like he would be the next likely to show up behind who did.
And like obviously like the fact that this isn't reality aside, there's something about like that he didn't imagine Nezuko, that it's like we're really not beating the like Nezuko allegations here. Where it's like she's one of the main characters, but where is she? And
Yeah.
I love her, but they're kind of right in this season a little bit. Where is she?
She's. I don't want to.
Where is she?
I don't want to get on my
Rachel!
soapbox that I talked
Nezuko!
about earlier. I love Nezuko, and
I love Nezuko, but she got replaced with a black-haired man in her place in this imagination scene.
love her. Understand why she's not there. Totally makes sense to the story. Wish she got a little bit more screen time for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I think we covered that part.
Very important
Half a
things
second
we're
of
talking
Murata.
about.
Perfect.
So, okay. Obviously, Tanjiro doesn't die. He is the main character. He cannot die during a training arc. That would be absolutely insane. What a twist the story would be if they're like, oh, by the way, he's dead.
Yeah, Tanjiro twisted his ankle and just ate it.
Just died.
Eren Yeager style.
What?
Anyway. So, Gyomei is here to save the day. Why is he just dumping water on him? Probably because, spoiler alert, I guess he's blind, so he can't actually see where he is what I'm assuming, but still funny. He is chanting Namu Amida Butsu, and Tanjiro's like, wait, am I actually dead? Is he, like, burying me? Like, what is going on? No, he's okay. And Gyomei tells him that he's completed his training, because he's moved to the Boulder One show, and also that he acknowledges him because he made the right decision in the Swordsmith Village to protect the villagers over his sister, right? So a couple things I noticed in this scene. First of all, someone called out, with this closing his training, it's kind of coming full circle, because where was Tanjiro at the very beginning of his training?
Yeah.
With a boulder.
Yeah, that's true.
He had to do something very different with it, but it kind of is definitely, in my opinion, coming full circle for him to finish his first training to become a Slayer with the boulder, and now he's finishing this training for, we'll talk about what is to come obviously later on, but with a boulder, just in different ways. So I thought that was interesting. And then, of course, as Gyomei says that he acknowledges him and that he made the right decision, Tanjiro's like, I didn't. Like, Nezuko 100% made that decision for me. I wasn't able to decide, and pretty much says if it weren't for her, those villagers would have died. So I mean, I love Tanjiro for this. He's so honest, and I thought that was really good on him to not just accept the price. He could have just said thanks, but he made it clear that he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, I think that's what makes Tanjiro a different MC, is that, like, he's so honest and pure. It makes him a lot more of a idealistic character in the sense that, like, not everyone's gonna say that. Like, a lot of people would be the one to take the easy route and be like, oh, thank you, yeah, like, I did that, yes. But, like, that's not him, and that's not who he is, and I think that's what makes him the character we all want to be, or that inspires the part of us as humans that wants to be more of that true soul, if you will, and try and be someone who can be so honest and pure about themselves and where they were in, like, their emotional conflict.
Very true. Very deep. Much nicer than what I was going to say. I'm going to say, Gyomei's got a thing for waterboarding people.
Oh, damn!
I knew you. I was like, I was just so going to bring that up.
What can I say? But we all know that's like top 2 panels in the entire story. So, have to bring it up. He sure got a thing for some water. But on the more serious note, it goes to show that Gyomei's not wrong to acknowledge Tanjiro, and he even begins to like say that immediately after. He's like, children are prone to lying and like imperfection because that is just what they are. They are selfishness embodied, which is true because like, especially when you're a really little kid, like on some level, all you're really trying to do is like have your needs met and like stay alive, really.
Yeah.
And you're not able to do that for yourself, so you have to selfishly get help from like the adults that are in your life, your parents or your guardians. So Tanjiro being so willing to admit, like, I appreciate it, but I can't take the credit for this. I think that Gyomei's acknowledgement of him deepens even in that moment, because it's like, okay, well, you were honest with me, and that's not what I'm used to, which we're going to talk about in just a second. And I still respect you because regardless, like between you and your sister, like the right thing has always happened in everything that you've been involved in. And I do agree that Tanjiro is like this idealistic character, which works really well for a story like Demon Slayer because he's not perfect, but he's pretty close. And even though he is human, he's like so close to being perfect that he's almost not in ways like this.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, like this is what you would expect a regular person to do, or like the three of us say this all the time, like if it was me, I'd be the one running away, or I'd be like the one passing out. Tanjiro's not like that because he's like so close, and that means he is like the perfect antithesis to somebody like Muzan, who is far on the opposite side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think children do tend to be, you know, you just lie because it's not necessarily out of anything bad, you just want to get your needs met, like you said. So we forget sometimes that Tanjiro is literally a child. I think at this point he's 16, so you know, what were we doing when we were 16? Not anything like this.
Working at Applebee's.
I was working at Olive Garden. Like, I
was working at TJ Maxx.
Oof. Wow, we all had wonderful jobs at 16. So, and probably to some coworkers, I don't know, have we ever lied to a coworker to make sure that like we get a better end of the bargain, or you know, whatever. So to see him do this, I also was thinking that there is the possibility that Gyomei was genuinely testing him here, because I am willing to bet there's reports of what happened. I mean, we know that like Genyo was physically there watching what was going down and just trying to get down there to like protect Nezuko. Kotetsu and Haganezka and Kanamori were all there watching it happen, pretty much just sitting there watching it happen. I would assume that after all of that went down, they probably were talked to by Hashira, or higher ups as they call it. It is probably known fact what actually happened, at least amongst the Hashira. So a part of me almost feels like Gyomei was testing him in this moment, because he says, like, I was, like, unsure of you. Like, you seemed too good to be true, honestly. And Tanjiro saying, like, no, don't acknowledge me, I'm not the one that made that decision, Nezuko is what finally made Gyomei actually acknowledge him, because he understood that Tanjiro, like, knows. To be honest, also Tanjiro wouldn't have been able to accept it because he also can't hold a straight face when he lies, and that would be lying to him. So I really like to kind of think of it, maybe Gyomei was kind of testing him in that moment to see if he really deserved his acknowledgement. And after Tanjiro goes through it, Gyomei says, you know, like, you have dispelled all my worries. I fully acknowledge you as a member of the Demon Slayer Corps, which of course Tanjiro's confused by. And then Gyomei goes into his monologue about his backstory. And what a backstory it is. We talk a lot about these sad backstories in the show, because it seems like it is every single person, save for maybe Mitsuri, and even then, like, hers is sad in just a different way, but not as, like, depressing as what we're used to. And Gyomei's is, in my opinion, one of the worst ones. You know, we see that he is helping raise all these orphans that he clearly cares about as if they're his own siblings or even kids. And also, side note, he's already by himself at 17 here, so we can assume that he probably lost other family or was born into, you know,
this orphanage.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of felt like maybe he was an orphan from a young age, which is why he was doing this as he got older. And one of the kids was out too late, and rather than tricking the demon and saying, hey, if you come here, you'll get all these people, but then like slips inside without burning the wisteria, without, destroying the wisteria, he instead destroys the wisteria. And all of the kids are murdered in front of Gyomei except for one. And as Gyomei continues to protect her, she then says that he's the one who killed them all. So a lot to unpack with this backstory. I just kind of wanted to open up for conversation on that one.
This is a really tragic backstory, and I think I had forgotten that it was one of the kids that had lured this demon back. I haven't read this part of the manga in a while, and it ties right back into like this selfishness, this sense of self-preservation, and granted this takes it to like a whole different level, but to play the devil's advocate a little bit here, it's like this is still a child that panicked, and probably would do what a lot of people would at least consider selfishly, and like try to stay alive. And so that's like what happens here. Interesting that the wisteria, like smoke, would have been enough to keep a demon that size out, though. I thought that, and it's interesting because Gyomei even mentions briefly, he's like, there's like folklore in these mountains about demons, but I don't think he'd ever actually seen one until this moment, and of course none of the kids had either.
Well, he can't see.
Oh. But
Right.
I can smell you.
I can smell you coming off the elevator.
The demon elevator.
That's known as the Infinity Castle.
But it's so tragic. He says like half the kids basically were taken out in the first few seconds.
Yeah.
And then, the rest didn't listen to him. They all met swift ends as well. And then it's the littlest girl who, by the way, like had this really sweet moment, like, and you're imagining her being his salvation in some way. Like she's introduced as like, she's like, I want to feed my teacher my food because he's too skinny. He's like, don't worry about me, you're literally 4.
Yeah.
But then but imagine what a 4-year-old is like though. Like if you've been around a kid that's that, like that is a baby. That is like somebody who barely has cognizant thoughts.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most traumatic things I could imagine anybody experiencing. So her little brain is just trying to make sense of it. So it makes sense to me that she would place the blame on him because he is the thing that's tangible. She's just now developed a sense of object permanence, and like he says, the demon's body evaporated when the sun came out. So there's nothing else there. And also, she was probably just confused. It was dark. There was a lot going on. Everybody was dying, and that's something that no 4-year-old should ever have to see.
Right. Trauma.
Yeah, I think with this, like, how do you make sense of that, right? Like, especially, like, with trying to grasp or conceptualize, like, what's real in this moment. Like, what she saw obviously wasn't the truth, but what she also saw, like, what the truth was didn't exist when it came down to it, because the demon's body was gone. So at that point, like, the child is even more confused. Like, nonetheless, like, how is a child supposed to understand demonology and stuff like that? I think it's, like, a lot of people don't understand how traumatic events can be with, like, small children and how they can, like, misconstrue perceptions and things like that. So do I blame this kid for not being able to, like, materialize and understand, like, what happened? Absolutely not. Do I think it's unfortunate for Gyomei and his circumstances? Of course. Like, no one deserves to be pinned against that blame, especially when all you did was try and protect everybody, and then you pull out this strength you never knew you had, and, like, you are able to unlock a part of yourself that you wouldn't have known about unless you had done this. So it's a very interesting, like, dichotomy of, like, feeling bad for the protagonist, but also, like, not feeling, like, awful for the child as well, because, like, they're doing what they can to protect themselves and, like, what their mind sees. So it's a very interesting kind of piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll add to that is something that caught my attention is that Gyomei also presents himself in this, like, very balanced, like, nearly perfect way, and like part of that is just silence, and is the direct references to Buddhism, I think. But something that was interesting about this is that he like says children are selfish and like da 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 da, and that is like part of the Buddhist, like you have to practice and refine the sense of balance to attain that kind of perfection. You have to figure out how to eliminate selfishness and become fully selfless. And yet he admits, like, I wanted her to thank me. Like, it wasn't really that his thought was so much like, I want to protect her, and that was part of it, but it was like he was like, I was kind of put out that she didn't remember and she didn't thank me. She's like, that's what I needed. Or he said that's what I needed. And that's like not really necessarily what Buddhism is, because that ties back into like the selfish.
I think it was more just in a world of like he had just, who knows how long he was smashing that demon's head. And he said he had to do it till sunrise, obviously because the demon would regenerate. So he just kept on pounding him until the sun rose. And he was doing it all for her. Every single thing, minute, hour, however long that was. All the other kids were dead at this point, and he did want to protect her, but for her to just say he's a monster, he killed everyone, and that to turn into him being arrested and set up for execution, I think was more just like I wish that she would have just thanked me. That's all I wanted after I protected her. Which is a very natural feeling. Natural, but not like him. Not usually. Like him, yeah. Because I kind of got the feeling that he was a little bit, like, they called him sensei. He had the beads. He said he never raised his voice ever once. He'd never known his strength because he'd never done anything, that he was revolted by his fists pounding in flesh, living beings, even though it was a demon, So this was all very new to him, and I think just that night, his life changed. Yeah. In more ways than one. And once you see it, you can really understand why he would be distrustful of children, though, because that's his experience. Is first the kid ran off, didn't follow the rules, and out of self-preservation said, here, if you don't kill me, you can eat all of my like essential siblings. Which, by the way, did anyone recognize the necklace on that kid? Manga readers. And perhaps it's something we've already talked about very briefly in this episode. If you're an anime only, I won't go into much, but I would highly suggest going back to season 1 and looking for that necklace, because yes, that character has appeared in the show before. That's all I'll say.
It's all coming together.
And it's looping in with other story developments that are currently happening too, which is really, really cool. That there's literally 2 completely different story developments happening here, which we only know one, but there's going to be another one.
Apologies if you can hear Nika in the back. She found her squeak toy.
She got her. The way when we got our dog, we did not buy one squeaky toy because we were like, absolutely not.
See, I think it's actually really cute. This is totally derailing the conversation, but I've never had a dog that actually was into it. They were always scared of the squeak. Aww. So I actually kind of love it. And it means she's not getting into something else. So
that's true. It lets you know that they are doing something that they are allowed to do. That is true. Anyway, side tangent. A really heartbreaking backstory. I love how it's very similar to so many, but very different in other ways. We've seen many of these characters have lost loved ones due to demons, and that's the case here, but to add that little extra bit of like being betrayed by one of the kids that he loved and protected, and then being betrayed again, essentially. Yeah. Do we blame her for that? Not really. As we've said, she's 4. That was a extremely traumatic experience even for an adult to experience, let alone a 4-year-old. It can cause confusion, as Gyomei says. It sounds like he's kind of forgiven her. He's like, what would you expect from a 4-year-old experiencing trauma like that? So, a really, really sad backstory, but we're not done learning about Gyomei. We're going to learn more about him and grow with him as the story progresses as well, but it was really good to see that like foundation of his character being built finally. I know a lot of people have been interested in him. He's been a mysterious character for sure. But backstory aside, he has officially acknowledged Tanjiro and told him that, you know, he's not like other kids, that he never backs down. He pats his head. So cute. And then we see a flashback of him patting the 4-year-old's head as well. And then we move on to a sweet little conversation between Tweedledee, Tweedledum, and Tanjiro. Inosuke, right? Inosuke, Genya, and Tanjiro are having dinner, and this is where we find out that Tanjiro is the only one who has passed the training. But Genya kind of talks a little bit about the fact that he's been training under Gyomei for a little while. We saw that, but he's not his Tsukugo. He is just been kind of his apprentice. And Gyomei introduced him to Shinobu. Shinobu's been very worried about Genya because he eats demons. And Tanjiro kind of talks to him a little bit about, like, she's doing that because she's worried about you. Like, eating demons is probably not the healthiest thing in the world, so...
Delicious.
Umai.
God damn it.
Oh, fudge. Anyway, it's a really sweet conversation. They just talk a little bit about, you know, their relationships with the Hashiras, and then Inosuke and Genya get into a little fist fight, which I've been waiting on because you knew with those two kids that was going to happen, which Tanjiro also knows exactly what to do with Inosuke and sits on him.
Perfect.
He knows him way too well at this point.
He knows gay.
He knows gay.
I'll be here all week. No, this was a really sweet scene, and Tanjiro is like playing mom yet again, which we've seen him literally be called in this season. And many of them have not made it this far, so alas, we're like pretty much down to these 3 for the time being. They haven't finished moving the boulder just yet. But it's fun to see Genya and Inosuke interact a bit more because we didn't really get a ton of that, and it makes sense that they're both just like so headstrong and so stupid and like such boys that it's like really fun to watch them go in against each other. And honestly, it's mostly Inosuke's fault. And Tanjiro has to be like, hey, don't eat that. That's Zenitsu's. Hey, stop fighting. The house is like literally like Looney Tunes shaking with the 2 of them fighting, and I'm like, oh, this is funny. I have to enjoy it while it lasts.
Jeez. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to kind of see Genya kind of come out of his shell a little bit. I think for most of the show, he's been very angry, a mini Sanemi, if you will. But now, because he's gotten so close to Tanjiro, like, he's been able to come out and open up, and I think that's what's really cool about this moment, is that, like, he's talking about his feelings, he's, like, embracing his sad masculinity, if you will. I don't know if that was the right word for that, but alas, we're going to keep rolling with it. I just think it's really cool to see Genya, like, open up and be more of, like, a part of the Kamaboko squad, if you will. Like, he's a late addition, a late bloomer in the Kamaboko squad, but I think he made it.
I literally, because I was just watching these episodes with my husband this morning in preparation for the season finale, and I was like, imagine Bakugo talking that softly, because it's the same voice actor. Mm-hmm. It's just a thought. It's fun to see Genya. I feel like this is his true personality coming through. The whole angry, like, shouting, doesn't want to be friends with anyone, was just like a front because he wanted to be like his big brother and he didn't want to be friends with people. And then he met Tanjiro and he was like, oh shit, I gotta be myself around him because he'll see right through me. And now he is just like chill. But him and Inosuke would of course butt heads, because at the end of the day, Genya is a Shinazagawa, so we know Sanemi's like Mr. Angry Boy. Mm-hmm. Genya's gonna have some anger as well, and then Inosuke is just so wild, and and of course Inosuke was like, you're weak because you can't use breathing styles, and it's like, okay, chill.
He's got a gun.
No. He's got America breathing. Of course he can use breathing styles.
Genya.
Is it Genma?
We did see Genma last night.
We did.
I was like, I know which one is which now. So in case you guys were wondering, it only took me 2 years. But
good job. Proud of you. Oh man, but I have to say, Tanjiro sitting on Inosuke is one of my favorite things. It's just like he knows exactly what to do. Anyway, he's like the big brother, just like, all right, chill out. I would like to see him get to that point, like get through the fight and be like, and wrestle him down and sit on him. Anyway, Tanjiro tells Genya, he's moving on to Giyu. Is he coming along? They're like, no. And he says something along the lines of, I want to talk to you about your brother, which that's all we get. Stay tuned for the rest of that conversation. Don't worry, anime onlys, that will come. You just probably will have to wait a few years for it. I'm so sorry. So after the conversation is done, we gotta check in with Zenitsu. And he's completely different. Zenitsu is everyone's favorite crybaby, always shouting. The last we saw him was still like very funny animated, very scared, like, oh my gosh, I can't move the boulder. But as we saw him get a letter, now he is grasping that letter, sitting on top of that rock, and speaking so quietly to Tanjiro. And Tanjiro's worried, like the rest of the audience probably. What's going on here?
Yeah, this letter is super important to his character arc. And like I said, we know as manga readers what it is, but we can't reveal what it is because of its significance throughout the rest of the story. I think it's just really important to note his demeanor shift here, and because we just watched episode 8, there's also another moment where his demeanor shifts again. This is just super relevant, and I think definitely pay attention to what comes next for him in the next arcs, because he definitely has his knight in shining armor moment coming.
I am really excited about this. I don't think I've talked about it for a while, but Zenitsu is like up there with some of my favorite characters because, for one thing, he makes me laugh, which is, I don't know, that holds a lot of weight for me because not everything's funny, not everything's exactly my sense of humor, but there's something that's relatable and funny about him, even if like maybe he's perceived as like annoying for that. It's kind of hard when you have to measure up against all these people that are like literally perfect, like Tanjiro. So it's like he's kind of a real one for some of the stuff that he does, and I think we do touch on that a lot. So to see him become more serious in this moment means that whatever's going on holds a lot of weight, and obviously there's already a lot of weight that's held by what we know is coming next with this Infinity Castle arc, but I don't know that he's fully aware of that because nobody really was. This is something separate, but possibly related, and I am excited to see him go psycho mode. But controlled psycho mode, and like maybe tap into what he's always had.
Yep, definitely a shift, definitely related to the letter that he got at the beginning of this episode, but really, really excited to see more of that in the next arc. Everyone's got character development in the show, and Zenitsu is not going to be one that doesn't, so excited to see what's more to come. He moves on. He is on his way to Gyu. He is back. And he is trying to find it. He remembers Nezuko. We see a quick little, she's crying in his mind. Maybe she's fine, but he's worried that she's lonely, but he's got a job to do. And as he approaches Gyu's dojo, I guess, this is different than where he was earlier, so I'm assuming like this is his training dojo, while where he was just like his regular house that he doesn't spend a lot of time at, which would make sense as to why he didn't have furniture, is that he doesn't spend much time there. Anyway, tangent. He hears noises, and we get some sparring between Gyu and Mr. Angry himself, Sanemi Shinazagawa. What a scene here, eh?
I think that this was really cool. This was really good because I loved the animation of the scene. They are going ham for the small parts that they can. I think we'll talk about episode 8 later, but besides that, like they still went very into these scenes and demonstrated the strength and power of the Hashira with kind of what they had to work with based off of the story and content. And I think that these were scenes that were really impactful just based off of the training arc, like separating the Hashira from kind of just a regular demon slayer and being able to see kind of how quick and how nimble they really are against each other and their power of fighting demons.
I love seeing the Hashira go up against each other, and especially the they're all elemental, but like this is cool because it's like water versus wind.
Yeah,
which is pretty interesting, and they're not even using they would kill each other if they had their real swords out. And that's not good because we need as many hands as we can possibly have in this last fight. Yeah. But like they're clearly taking it pretty seriously, and Sanemi has a bone to pick with Gyu anyway because he's like, what's wrong? Weren't you saying you're not like the rest of us?
And Tanjiro's like, wait, he didn't mean it like that. I was like, "Aw."
Thanks, Mom. Yeah. More of both, please. Please, sir, can I have some more?
No, literally, I agree. I like the water and the wind together because these are two of the most elemental like fighting styles of all the Hashira. So to see these two very basic forms almost together was really cool. And the blue and the green is like a really cool color mixture as well. I really enjoy this. I love both Sanemi and Gyu as characters, and we've talked about this. I do ship them, which is funny. So it's like that tension. It's still Pride Month, okay?
Perfect.
I did like also that Tanjiro is able to follow their movements now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this goes to show how much stronger he has gone. And he's like essentially Hashira level at this point. I would say that he would be getting the promotion of Hashira now if it weren't for the fact that there's just like not really time for the promotion or whatever.
Yeah.
They're on like a hiring freeze.
They're on a hiring freeze. So at this point, they're like, what's the point in a title when we know we're heading into the final battle? You know, like, yeah, it would have been cool to be like, hey, he became a Hashira, but like, it's not needed for his character arc, so it's probably not going to happen at this point. But to see that he's able to follow their movements, when we go back to Mugen Train, when he was like, I can't follow their movements, and now he can, was just another full circle moment, really fun. So Tanjiro steps in though because he is using his one brain cell, and thinks that they're legitimately fighting over Ohagi, which is like red bean mochi. One brain cell, I'm telling you, that kid in any other circumstance outside of fighting is like one of the dumbest kids. Love him. There's of course a back and forth. Sanemi gets angrier and angrier with him the more he mentions Ohagi. Punches him so hard that he knocks him out and throws him across the ground. Tanjiro wakes up to Gyu sitting there waiting for him to wake up, which, a little side note, he took off his Haori, which is very important to him, and put it underneath his head to show how much he cares about Tanjiro at this point. And they have like the dumbest conversation I've ever seen in my life. Like, down to their last brain cell. I keep using that term, but it's just the only thing I can come up with, as Gyu imagines that he's just gonna carry around Ohagi all the time and offer it to Sanemi whenever he sees him, and that will make us friends. Do you think that's gonna work?
No. Absolutely not. Not even close. But what kills me is the way that, like, Gyu's been so stoic and mysterious this entire time, and then immediately after his, like, previous episode with Tanjiro, he is, like, they're matching each other's freak. They're, they're, like, both so derpy and, like, silly and kind of dumb and, like, airheaded. They're like, huh. He's like, do you think that I could be best friends with him if I just brought him? It's like, no, Gyu. No.
And Tanjiro's like, yeah, do it! Ah, yay, that's a great idea. It's like, oh my god.
And also, he's like, again, like, apologies for any puppy noises, but, like, the way we were, he's like, maybe I'll just hide some in my coat. And I'm like, is he trying to train him? Like, here's a treat if you can just be nice.
Sit, Sanemi.
Do a spin. When breathing fifth form.
They're both doing a little nasty girl dance, like, I've been a nasty girl.
I've been a nasty girl.
They're just two idiots at this point, and, like, it's so funny. Like, I feel like it's, like, if Orokodaki saw the way that they're behaving right now, he'd be like, what the is up with the two of you? Like, get it together, kids. It's ridiculous.
Angry father vibes, like, what are my sons doing?
Exactly.
These are the two that survived. Wow. Of all the trainees that he had, he's like, how did that happen?
It's the red bean mochi.
Yeah.
Muzan's gonna go to stab him and it's gonna be protected by a mochi. His jacket.
Instead of trying to go Muzan,
the mochi. Boing.
I'm telling you, these, like, fighting demons must just kill their brain cells so that they just have nothing left when they're just in regular human interactions. And the bird is even like, nice, like, good idea, baka. Like, it's not gonna work.
Baka.
Like, absolutely not. So I wanted to sit on that scene. I literally paused it because we are done with the silly moments after this. This was our last little, like, slapstick comedy, super silly, dumb characters, because we now go to Sanemi. Sanemi is, first of all, like, venting over Tanjiro. Like, I think there's something wrong with you, dude. Every other Hashira loves him, except for Obanai, but, like, he's indifferent to him. He's only jealous. That's all that's going on there. Sanemi kind of talks to himself, is mad that Obanai and Muichiro aren't there. They must be on patrol that night. And then he suddenly freezes. And very quickly, with very fast reflexes, is the first to figure out that they are being followed as he grabs one of the eyes that Nakime has sent out. And he very quickly deduces that they've been infiltrated because at this point, I believe he's very close to the mansion. Oh boy.
Eepy.
Yeah, I'm so sleepy.
I saw your eyes getting heavy there.
Bro.
Drink some more coffee.
We're almost there. No, I think that this is a really cool moment because of all people to discover it, it's Sanemi. And Sanemi, while he is a hard outside shell character, he really does care for Ubuyashiki, and he does care a lot about how the master is like doing and stuff like that. So for all people to him to find it, like, I think this is the most, like, one of the best people to have found it because he's going to get the information out quickly. Like, he's going to do something about it. So it's really nice to see him in a moment that's pivotal because it shows that he does still care about the master as well. And, like, he does still care about, like, what he's doing. And, like, regardless of how hard he is on others or, like, how hard he is on, like, Genya, he still does care about, like, winning the overall battle of fighting demons. He's not just a dick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, he's definitely one of the most... Not that they're not all serious, obviously, like, there has to be a level of that to become a Hashira in the first place. But there's something about him, like, taking the duty, like, extremely seriously. And I think that carries over from some childhood trauma. And it is interesting foreshadowing that he is the one that finds this eye and, like, springs into action the quickest. Mm-hmm. And also, I think, possibly related to his breathing style and his ability, because it's like he can sense a slight change in the wind or anything that's like moving at that level past him. And interesting that the eye was able to move like this considering the other ones were crawling. He plucked this one out of midair.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me, to make an Avatar Last Airbender reference, airbenders can like sense things by the current like on their head because they're so aware of the air around them because that's their element. So I almost feel like Sanemi is very similar to that because his breathing style is wind related. I think he's just a little bit more sensitive to those things, which is why he was able, because we know these eyes have been following Hashira. We saw the eye following Muichiro a few episodes ago. So Muichiro didn't notice it, but Sanemi did. And I think Sanemi is just really, really strong and just able to kind of feel the shift of the air around him because of his breathing style, which is really, really cool. And he's able to deduce that they've been infiltrated, and we jump right into quite possibly one of the most hyped up, intense villain entrances of any show that I've ever watched. I've never experienced this before at all. UFO Table really said, we're going to extend this episode 5 minutes just so the main villain can have 5 minutes of walking. And it was, let's talk about it.
This exit of the episode, entrance of the villain. I thought that this was so cool, and I don't care what anybody says, they could have let him walk for 10 minutes, and I would have watched it willingly, because I mean, this is like the big bad, and it feels like it got here quickly, even though the show's already been coming out for several years.
Yeah.
And I remember, I almost wish I could have experienced this for the first time as an anime only, but I remember when this happened in the manga being like, oh, like this is happening now.
Yeah.
This is happening now, and I just thought that the camera work and the animation of this and the sound design and just like every single creative decision that they made for this scene was so beautiful. I could talk about it for days, but I'll pick like one standout moment for me was as Muzan was coming around the bush towards Ubuyashiki and the camera blurred and then all you could really see was like the outline of him moving closer, but really like the reds of his eyes, and the way it was like shaky and flashing and like flashes of red after you saw the reds of his eyes was so beautiful. And I don't know that I am exactly right, but I'm going to share like my interpretation of the way that this was animated. And I was like, obviously we know that Ubuyashiki's not doing so well and can't really see, but in my mind, this was either the small glimpses of maybe what he could catch looking out, or what his mind's eye was seeing as he was like imagining Muzan coming towards him. And it was so creepy, so well done. One of my favorites.
Yeah, I think this was really good. I thought that the sound design was really good. I loved all the whooshing of Muzan as he was walking towards them. I loved all of the footsteps as he was walking towards them. Like, there was just a lot of stuff that was really good to listen to. And I think it's interesting, like, if you were to close your eyes and just listen to it, because that's probably what, like, even though he can imagine and kind of, like, maybe make out glimpses, is kind of like what Emily was saying, he's probably relying on his hearing a lot to see, or, like, hearing a lot to, like, quote-unquote see what's going on. So if you listen to it, you're probably getting the most accurate depiction of what Ubuyashiki is, like, actually experiencing, to know that Muzan is on his way.
In music video format.
Yeah, right.
Because, like, first of all, the quick little scene before the ending credits where the door opened slowly, like, the sound design of, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It felt like something like Stranger Things would do. Like, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but him opening that door and slowly walking through, and you only see his shadow kind of through the steam. And then we watch the ending credits, which this whole season has been foreshadowing this moment, and we didn't really know, because that whole ending credits is Muzan walking. And then it just continues on in this episode, and it came full circle, which was so cool. Just every little bit of it was so, like, meticulously done by Ufotable. And agreed, I almost wish that I got to watch this as an anime only, because it was so just like, we're happy, silly, goofy talking about one brain cell, and now we're doing this? Like, this is Endgame. This is it. Muzan is the main big bad. And at first you don't even know exactly where he is. You just can assume that he's somewhere not good. And then they show, like, the depth perception kind of view where it's like, okay, we see Ubuyashiki, and then the music kind of fades away, and then he's in the frame as well. And it just, like, builds up and builds up. It was, like, 10 out of 10. I don't think they could have really done that any better, personally. Also, shout out to Amane for just standing her ground. I would be freaked out. Even if my husband was like, I'm gonna lay here and I'm gonna take it, because, like, it's pretty obvious that he knows that this is gonna happen. Amane, like, probably didn't, like, she probably had the choice. He probably could have told her, like, hey, you don't have to be there if you wanna, like, not get killed by Muzan. Maybe go be away, but she's just sitting there watching him approach.
Yeah.
And I think she gets forgotten in this scene. Like, like, just her sitting there, girl power, honestly.
Girl.
So brave.
Girl boss, gatekeep, gaslight. Something like that.
Yeah.
I've been a nasty girl.
Oh, Lord. But watching this in a hotel room with my headphones on was really hard, because I was, like, sitting there trying to not, like, freak out as he walked up next to my husband, who hadn't watched the episode yet. So well done. Yeah, do you have anything else to add to that scene? I feel like
so beautiful.
It's hard to, like, do it justice when talking about it because of how good it was.
Visually.
Yeah.
The only thing that would have made it better is if they had played specials over it.
You are my special.
I'm just saying, like, it's a missed opportunity.
Ufotable should have called Mop up and been like, hey, can we use this song in one time? No, honestly, I loved this ending song, and I think I mentioned on the podcast that it's been my favorite so far of the show. So to see them use it in that way, it totally makes sense as to why it's been such a dark theme ending for such a lighthearted season. So really, really well done. For those people who are complaining because we extended the season, just to have Muzan walking. Instead of being like, oh, all we got was Muzan walking in our extended content, how about you look at it this way? Ufotable extended the episode for us so that they could build up this hype of him walking in to make one of the greatest villain entries ever. Think about it more in the positive way.
Because episode 8 slapped.
Holy frick, we're going to talk about that in a moment. And I'm trying to not think about it right now, otherwise I'm going to dissolve into a puddle. So, I think that's about it for this episode, though. Do you have anything added?
No.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what manga chapters were covered real quick. Pretty straightforward now because we're kind of out of the, like, manga original content.
Yeah.
They added a little bit to, like, Gyomei's backstory here and there, but otherwise the whole thing was word for word directly what the manga did. So we picked up about 2 pages into chapter 35, and we followed all the way through to the end of 136. So almost 2 chapters in this episode. Again, it was pretty much straight word for word. Everything is exactly the way it was in the manga. The only thing that was really added was, I mean, if you can see in this, I don't know if I'll try and zoom in when I edit it, but this is Sanemi grabbing the eye. This is Muzan talking to Kaguya. So, like, all of that walking and even Sanemi saying, like, we've been infiltrated was anime original content, and that was kind of what they focused in on this episode to make original. And, again, just one more time, I'm going to say, Ufotable, you're amazing. Like, truly, everything that they've added this season has just been so fantastic. So, we're actually at the end of this episode, technically at the end of Hashira Training. Chapter 137 is the official start of Infinity Castle arc. So episode 8 is entirely, technically, Infinity Castle. Fun fact.
Pretty cool.
We're here.
We made it, folks.
We have not made it. We are... we'll check in on that after the end of the show. See you in a few years. Yeah, that's what they adapted. So we're getting to the end. Let's talk about favorite moments. I can go first. While the Muzan sequence was amazing, and I just have to shout it out, like, I think that's a clear favorite for all 3 of us, probably. I'll go with a different thing just because that was so obviously my favorite. And just Gyu versus Sanemi, the way it was animated, Tanjiro's little, like, oh, I can follow, and then him being like, that's not what he meant, was just really well done. Again, I love water and wind together. I love the dynamic of those 2. I'm excited to see, hopefully, more of their dynamic later on in the story. And I just really enjoyed that moment.
I think my favorite moment was Zenitsu receiving the letter and kind of how his demeanor changed throughout the episode after he read the letter, and just kind of the entire letter, and depending on if you notice what we've alluded to or if you haven't, just keeping those things in mind. It's been really interesting to see kind of Zenitsu's character development in this episode because it's like very subtle, but it's also very prominent for himself and very important to his story arc. So we'll see where that goes from here and how much further they can take that in the anime.
I think I have to agree that my favorite moment was the Muzan walk-up because it was just animated so beautifully and really elaborated what was in the manga in a way that the manga really couldn't do. Nobody would want to look at 10 pages of Muzan walking up, but it worked really, really well for the episode. To pick something that's less obvious than the ending scene, though, I actually really liked Gyomei's fight with the demon, and, like, especially the origin of the scar on his head that I don't think we touched on. And it's like, oh, like, everyone's banged up that's a Hashira because they've all been through it, let's be real, but getting to see, like, the origin of, like, where this one came from, his, like, eternal tears almost as well. It's a moving backstory and one that I think was worth the wait.
Such a good episode. Definitely, probably my favorite so far of the season as of episode 7. We'll talk about episode 8 next. But that was a great episode. Covered a lot. We got one more to go, y'all. It's already almost over. But with that, I think we are finishing up for this episode, so thank you all for listening in. If you liked this episode, don't forget to like the video on YouTube, comment what your thoughts were on the episode, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Also, if you're listening on your podcast platforms, don't forget to download the podcast, and you also can answer our Q&A that is in the episode posting. So if you want us to answer it in a future episode, please use that feature. You can also follow us on social media. We are at Hashira Half Hour on Instagram and TikTok, and at Hashira Half on X. With that, thank you for listening in this week. And as always, umai.
Umai.
Ooh, my.
Umai.
Umai.
Ooh,
Ooh, my.
my.
My.